On Sunday, protesters in Brasilia who support former President Jair Bolsonaro and reject his election loss in October marched to the center of power in the capital, Brasilia, and they stormed three of the most important buildings in the country, if not the most important buildings: the Supreme Court, Congress, and the presidential palace. They trashed all three of the buildings. They tossed furniture, they overturned desks, they hurled computers and printers to the ground, they destroyed some of Brazil's treasured artworks, and really just ran amok and caused havoc in the capital. These were Bolsonaro supporters who refused to accept his election loss. Now, Bolsonaro had already laid the ground for an uprising of this sort. We had had political analysts warning of it for months. He had been straining against other institutions, particularly the Supreme Court, and at one point threatened to disobey any rulings from one specific justice. He sowed doubt about election results and said that the electronic voting system that's been in use since 1996 and has never had any proof of fraud was susceptible to fraud. Now, he didn't present any evidence, but his supporters lapped this up, and many of them continued believing that there had been fraud after the election.
Obviously, to a number of people, this all sounds familiar because there are a number of striking parallels with the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. On January 6th, you had a huge mass of demonstrators who had been riled up by false claims about elections on social media, who were trying to stop the inauguration of somebody who was defeating their populist leader. And they stormed the U.S. Capitol complex. They rifled through the desks of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress. They had banners with, wild conspiracy theories about computer codes and voting machines that were rigged against them and stuff like that. Both Trump and Bolsonaro are similar on paper. They both are populist candidates who rose up from the right against this kind of perceived establishment that has failed the people. And they promised that they would shake up the establishment, more or less overthrow the existing order and fix a corrupt system. The parallels are certainly striking and important to understand, but it's also important not to get too caught up in the similarities because these are two different countries and these are two different events. One of the big differences, of course, is Brazil's got a much, much higher level of dissatisfaction with its political system than the United States. It's obviously a poorer country, a developing country, huge problems with endemic corruption. Lula himself, who had been president previously, had been convicted in a giant money laundering scandal. So there's all sorts of extra kind of problems and pressures in Brazil that the United States really does not face.